Welcome to Music Loop Podcast, brought to you by ASME SA Chapter. This is your very excited, happy, friendly podcast host, Chris Narraway. Music Loop is a podcast for people who want to reach out, connect and be inspired. Music Loop is designed to create a connection point for educators to support their involvement with music education. Whether you are a classroom practitioner or music specialist, this is an opportunity to reach out, offer support to others, ask questions and take action. Get involved in music education.
I'm Robbie Howard and I'm your host on today's episode of Music Loop, which is titled Advocating for Access, how one passionate principal has connected with music education, incorporating it into her vision for equity. Our guest today is Bec Knight. Bec, I'm told, is persistent and positive and a half-glass full sort of person. She is passionate about the inclusion of music education in schools, and this is evident when she talks about how this education enriches and supports students' learning and social experiences. Bec is also the principal of Enfield Primary School and has been since 2015. Enfield Primary School is a school that has some unique features and consequently has an exciting and I would imagine sometimes a challenging culture. It caters for students from more than 16 different nationalities, with more than 50% of students born overseas and learning English as a second language. It is situated on a beautiful open and natural space which it shares and works in partnership with local and state service providers, including a children's centre and preschool, child, youth and women's health services and a family daycare business centre. All of this information is on its website. Together I was fascinated to find with a translation icon which is indicative of its diversity. Today we'll look at Bec's vision for Enfield Primary School and how she's going to make that vision into a reality. We'll also explore what drives her and keeps her going, the challenges she faces in her leadership position and how she will succeed in her ambitions for her school. So welcome, Bec.
Hi.
Hi. But for now, let's go back to when you were a little girl in England. What sort of little girl were you?
What sort of little girl was I?
Yes.
Oh, I suppose it depends on who you talk to. No, I think I was probably a very engaged and studious student. I loved going to school, and I know from an early age that my parents bought me my own little student's desk that would sit in the corner of our dining room, and I would play schools and be the school mum, and so it was learning and curiosity and education. It's always been part of who I am and what I've been doing, and my parents encouraged me a great deal in those areas.
And you've persisted in
I
that.
have.
You're one of those lucky kids that knew what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Yes, I was, and I think one of those people as well, and many people in the education sector would be in the same place, that we've never really left school. We started in preschool and we are still here, just in a different role, but still as keen to be here.
Wonderful. So you did your training, your formal training in the UK?
I did, yes.
And you taught in the UK as well?
I did. I was at the University College of Ripon and York St John and graduated in 2001 and won my first teaching position in 2002 in when I think about it, a very similar context. It would be an equivalent of a Category 2 school in a complex, low socioeconomic area. Had a really strong leadership team there and fellow educators that really helped ground me and helped me develop early on as an early teacher.
So is that an experience that has formed who you are now as a principal, as a leader in a school, or, you know, did you learn by example, or how did that work?
I think that there was a very strong leadership team in that school, and I know that there's been many times when I've reflected on my experience of working with them, the way they supported me as a young teacher and the expectations that they had in providing quality education for our students. We knew that they were coming in at a much lower level and that we had a greater distance to take them, but we were always looking at that value added. We knew where they were coming in, and we were trying to maximise the distance that they travelled while they were in our care, and providing not just the academics, but having to acknowledge and support them in all areas of development, because that affected the education as well at the end of the day.
Right. So was that something, did you learn that at uni, or was it that something was on the job learning?
With the UK system, and particularly at the time when I did my training, there was a very strong push around how we planned for learning and the learning design in terms of language that we use here in South Australia. And we were, my very first year, we were, within the first 6 months, we were out in schools in Middlesbrough, which was a very difficult area. There was a lot of poverty there, and the schools had a high number of complex kids. And so we were, as pre-service teachers, out in teams in those classrooms, really getting stuck in with those complex kids, because it really gave us the opportunity to go, is this the direction that we want to go in? Because this is what classrooms can be like. And if you really didn't feel that affinity at that point, you could opt out early on, and then the people that stuck around and that we continued, we were there because we knew that's where we wanted to be. We wanted to be in the classrooms. It didn't matter whether we were in the leafy greens or with those really core complex schools and students, we were going to be there, and that's what we wanted to do.
Sounds wonderful. And so you came to Australia.
Yes.
With all that background of
Yes.
working with those particular learners, those students, challenges that you had there.
Yes.
Came to Australia. What was that like for you?
It felt like I was in another world, to be perfectly honest. First of all, obviously acclimatising to temperature. That was a big challenge. But in terms of the education system, I had come from such a structured system. I had to, the way that I had to plan and teach, and the expectations and the curriculum there. Coming over here, and the SACSA that was in place at that time, and the way that I could see the teachers were planning learning, they seemed to have a lot more creativity and control, and could bring more of themselves into it to a certain extent. So I kind of went, wow, I've got a bit of leeway here. But then I found myself drawing myself back to what I knew from the UK in terms of being able to bring back that structure, the rigour around differentiation, clear learning intentions. Not to say that it wasn't happening in the South Australian system, but the approach to the planning at the time, I did find myself leaning back towards what I knew and from how I'd learnt in the UK.
I'm not a teacher, so I'm going to ask you a question that might sound a bit silly. Can you do that sort of stuff? Can you actually be a little bit autonomous as a teacher?
Yes, you can.
In the education system, in the state education system?
You can, but I think it's like with anything. You learn the system first.
Right.
You learn what all the bits and pieces are, and then you learn how you can put them together creatively.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And there are a lot of very skilled teachers out there who have really developed such a vast and strong knowledge of the curriculum. We have the TEFL here in South Australia as well, which is looking at really good quality practice and being able to bring that through all together in an engaging way, because otherwise it would be a very tick the list, boring kind of curriculum. Teachers spend a lot of time trying to work out how they can make the connections and really build that learning for the students.
What's TEFL?
It's teaching for effective learning. Sorry, it's one of those little acronyms that just roll off the tongue. Yeah.
I guess I'm just fascinated in how you came from probably a different academic, tertiary type qualifications than you met when you were here in South Australia, and how that's affected you or influenced you in particular in the way you obviously you said that you teach the way you works for you, which is lovely. Has that given you some added advantages, do you think, your education in the UK, that the experiences that you had in those schools did that prepare you better as a young teacher for the experiences that you got in or started to get in South Australia?
I think when I reflect on what I experienced in my degree when I was learning to be a teacher, and I think about the pre-service teachers and the university qualifications that are happening here in South Australia, I must admit I do find myself thinking that I had a much more structured and detailed degree in terms of really breaking down how to plan, how to differentiate and delivering it in the classroom. But then I also think I missed out on some of the other areas that are looked at and developed here around looking at that real social emotional, looking at well-being, even though they were brought up and they were important. So I think there's different strengths in the different systems.
Yep.
And it's about, as I said, I've been trying to draw on my experiences from the UK, but then also I've learnt so much from being and seeing the growth and development within the South Australian system. That's been so exciting.
Really?
Yes.
Fantastic. So here you are in South Australia from the UK. Where did you start on your, obviously still wanted to be a teacher, still enthusiastic about education. Where did you go? What did you do when you first came here? Were you able to go straight into a school or?
My decision to move over here had quite a short timeline to it. I married an Australian.
That'll
Lovely.
do it.
Yeah. So, we decided circumstances changed and we needed to move over here. So in terms of being prepared, once I got over here, I had all my documentation, but I hadn't got any processes up and running. So It was things I had to get cracking once I got over here. But I was going a bit stir crazy. It was really interesting how quickly I became stir crazy, not being in a school and in a classroom.
Right.
And it happened to be that my mother-in-law connected me with the deputy principal at the then Evanston Primary School. And I started to do some volunteer work there, and it was the leadership team there with Viv Wright and Meredith Starkey who helped me to gain some understanding and perspective of the South Australian system. They guided me in terms of what I needed to do to get my teacher registration and get my authority to teach, and then got up and running.
And so you were up and running, where did you go then?
I had a terms contract at Gawler Primary, and once again a bit of a shell shock because when I was in the UK I was my last few years had been teaching in Year 5 and Year 6, and the contract that I got was with reception students.
Of course it was.
So I did have a momentary panic of what do I do with these little people? But no, once again there was a wonderful teaching team that were at Gawler Primary School who took me under their wing and once again made sure I had what I needed, guided me when I had questions, and yes, I quickly got very settled there.
And from Gawler?
From Gawler I went to Elizabeth Downs. So once again a reception teacher, and I stayed there pretty much at Elizabeth Downs at that point. So that was 2007, and I taught various year levels until the end of 2009, when I won a position as a numeracy coach. And so for 2010, I was back at Gawler Primary, reconnected there, but then also working across Sandy Creek Primary and Springton Primary.
So you were a specialist teacher in lots of ways.
I was, yes. So when I'd been in the UK, I had started to take on some leadership style roles within the school, and I'd been an IT coordinator, and then I'd been stepping up into what was called a Key Stage 2 coordinator. So years 3 to 7, the upper primary was our Key Stage 2. So I was already starting to want to get into those roles of looking at the wider impact of good quality programs, supporting teachers to develop their practice, and looking at how we can support the students as well within the school. So I was very keen to get back on that trajectory once we got into South Australia. But obviously, new teacher, new country, you've got to find your feet and build up a little bit of credibility before you can get into that.
But you finally did.
I did, yes. And that year of being a numeracy coach was fantastic. And the opportunity to work with some wonderful teachers directly and being able to get into classrooms in a different capacity. It was, seeing things from a different perspective. So that really probably enhanced my desire to move into further leadership positions.
And you did that too.
I did indeed, yes. So at the end of that year, I won my permanency as a teacher back at Elizabeth Downs.
Yeah.
And not long after getting back there, the opportunity came to apply for the deputy position as an internal advert, and I won that and was able to, luckily enough, I was able to stay as the deputy for the next 3 years.
At Elizabeth Downs?
At Elizabeth Downs, yes. And
what happened then?
What happened then?
Step
Step by step. No, the end of 2000, well, by the end of 2013, the principal at Elizabeth Downs won another position, and I was asked to step up as acting principal for a year, and I was the one leadership position that I can honestly say I never had any aspirations for was head teacher, principal. So I'd always thought I could get into the leadership position, assistant principals, deputies at that kind of level, but never the principal. So when I was asked if I would step up for a year, I thought, well, it's a short-term gig there. I can give it a go, and then if I don't want it anymore, I can step back and I'd still be in my leadership position. But that year taught me a lot of things, and the biggest one was I want my own school.
Right. So you got that confidence. You got
Yes.
an understanding of what the role was, that you could do that, and it excited you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A chance. What was it about the excitement? What excited you in particular about that leadership role? Was there any one thing, or was it a lot of things?
I've not thought about that before. I suppose it was a combination of things. Once again, it's seeing the life of a school from a different perspective. It's stepping further back from the classroom, but you're also connecting with the classrooms in a different way. It's working with the staff. It's looking at that, where the direction of the school can go to. And it was a whole heap of things, I think, that they just all came together, and it was a bit of a roller coaster ride all the way through that year, building that network of colleagues, because not only you've got the teachers and SSOs and staff members that you're working with, but as the principal, starting to make those wider connections. There were some fantastic principals and preschool directors and high school principals that were in that partnership, and the ED at the time as well. They all came together as a really important network of people who were there to support. And at that time as well, I also had a mentor in place. So Carol Williams, who was the principal at Highbury for a couple of years by that point, she'd been a mentor to me. I'd done an aspiring leaders course. I can't remember the title of it at the moment, but I'd reached out for a mentor. The principal at the time had connected me with Carol, and we'd had an ongoing relationship at that point, and I think that was also a key factor in knowing I had that support in terms of being able to be that acting principal.
So it sounds to me as if you put things in place for you to support you around that role.
Yes.
To make sure that it worked for you.
Yes.
Great. And you obviously succeeded, because here you are at Enfield.
Yes.
And you gained that position in 2015.
That's correct.
That's quite a short travelling time, isn't it, really, from being in a classroom teacher or from work, volunteering, to a principal, head teacher.
It is when you sit and look back, but quite often you don't have the time, or you don't take the time, should I say, to sit back sometimes and think where you've come from. You're so busy where you're at and where we're going to.
So here you are at Enfield Primary School, which is, as I said in the beginning, is I'd imagine, a fairly unique school, particularly in a place like South Australia where we have a lot of different communities, but often not, I would imagine, that range of difference within a particular school. And it's not a very big school, is it? Is
No.
it? No.
We're not big, but we're growing.
Great. But that in itself, I guess, would have its own challenges as well.
True.
So, when you came to Enfield, was there anything that you came with, this I must do, this has to be done, or was it more, let's have a look and see, and then see what possibilities there are?
Yes.
That was it.
It was, I could see that there was, I think, the multicultural nature of the school, and the fact that, because we have, in proportion to our overall enrolments, the number of families that identify as Aboriginal, it's quite high for our school.
Right.
And so knowing that we've got those wonderful diverse elements that come together here, and then we have the Children's Centre on site as well, and then there's the Learning Together program. I could see lots of opportunities, and there were lots of people coming together to support the community. But it was, when I first arrived, it was very much around, I wanted to see what Enfield Primary School was all about. I wanted to see the teachers in action. I wanted to get to know the students, get to know the community and the other people that connect with it, because there was no point coming in and trying to make something happen when you don't understand what is important to the people here. And with it being my first principal position, I hadn't yet probably worked out exactly what my leadership style was and how I was going to bring something of myself to the school. So it was very much, I wanted to come in and be a learner.
Right. Was it a bit scary?
Yes.
I can imagine it would have been, yes. So was there, and we'll get on to this, I guess we'll get on to the music thing now. What was it about music education? Was it happenstance that the government at that stage, or was it perhaps a bit later when they started seeing the importance of musical education in schools? Or was that round about that time? Was that an impetus for you, or was it something that you had wanted to do before that?
I think I've always had a connection with music.
Right.
It was a strong part of my primary school years. So I've got lots and lots of fond memories of primary school. We had, because there was always music happening throughout the week. So there was every classroom had some instruments, but then we had the big green music trolley that would get wheeled in, and we'd have lessons. We'd have singing every week. We would do country dancing. And so there was always a musical element. And towards the end of my primary school, the deputy that came in, Mr. Spence, he was extremely passionate, and he wanted students and community involved. So we had really big concerts by that point, and we'd put on performances, and so lots and lots of fond memories of that. And also when I was 7, I decided I wasn't going to be a gymnast. Didn't want to do that, no. And my mum connected me with the daughter of a family friend, and I started to learn to play the flute. And so I started personally learning an instrument, and I was never ever going to be, a top-notch player, but I enjoyed it at the time, and it actually got me from learning with Emma, my teacher at the time, and then went on to having more formal lessons and doing my theory of music, and that also led me into opportunities at my high school. So we had a school band, so an orchestra, And so I was part of that for at least three years while I was there, until obviously got too cool for playing the flute and there was other things to do. But once again, wonderful memories of being with that group of people, and the blood, sweat and tears that went into rehearsals and getting ready for performances, and then the absolute elation and joy of having a wonderful performance in front of an audience. One particular memorable one, we would always play for Remembrance Sunday, and so we marched. So and I have a vivid memory of being highly embarrassed with all my friends because we had to practice marching up and down the main driveway of our secondary school at lunchtimes. And so you got everyone else watching you and you're going, oh, friends are watching us.
But that was something very special, and those memories were...
It was. The friendship building, as well as the joy of playing music and everything that brought with it. It's, as I said, it's been a very strong thread all the way through. And when I started my teaching career, there was still a strong music component to the curriculum. And the school I worked at, we had a specialist music teacher. And so there would be a timetable, and you would take your class. You wouldn't leave them. You would stay with them so that you were part of the lesson, supporting the teaching, and then also doing the observation and some of the assessment as well. And the staff got involved. We would make up songs, changing words to pop songs, and perform them, say, at a end of year assembly, and we'd get involved and do dancing. And so it's all the way through. Music has been a very strong flavour.
You can hear that in your voice, and your verbal and your non-verbal language shows that excitement. And it must, yes, to have that personal experience as a student, and then to continue on to see your students having those experiences as well. Obviously had a lovely impact on you. And
it has. And at Elizabeth Downs as well, it was they had a school choir, and they'd had that going for a little while, and they were connected with the Festival of Music. And they would perform at that time. They would perform at Starplex and one of the regional performances, and so that was probably my first connection and finding out that there was the Festival of Music and that opportunity for kids to participate in such quality teaching for their singing, and to be part of that group, a larger group of people all singing together and having to know your part and the presentation and performance skills. So I was like, wow, this is something that's available in South Australia. I've never heard of that before. So I was really keen to be involved. And the teacher, Karen McKenzie, who was the choir teacher, was really passionate about having the kids singing and practicing. And she'd also have singing sessions during lunchtime, and it would just be singing pop songs, but the joy of getting them there and connecting, because music bringing people together. And then when I came here, realising that we also had a choir that was very long-standing, connected with the Festival of Music, and their performances they connected through and went into the Festival Theatre. So
big deal.
It was, and it was realising what such a large scale this whole thing was. So just realising how many schools were connected through these wonderful performances that are organised every year. And so about a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, gosh, where's the time gone? I was asked if I'd like to be a primary principal that connected with the Festival of Theatre and join in their executive board meetings to provide a primary principal's voice in the planning, organisation and support. And I just jumped at the chance. It's amazing.
It is. So how has that influenced what you've done or trying to do here at Enfield? That knowledge, those networks, those experiences, what you saw, what you felt?
I know that the my staff here, we have our motto here is about empowering students to learn and achieve, and every single staff member is always looking for those opportunities to support the growth of the whole child, and we try to provide not only the best academic learning for them, but then also looking at those other experiences that they can grow and develop as individuals. And not everyone's going to have academic strengths, and they will get by, but they can find passions and strengths and fulfillment in other areas. So we've got a strong PE program here, and trying to connect out with having clinics and connections with what was called SAPSASA, and just those opportunities through sports and fitness.
Yeah.
And so with the choir, that was an opportunity for the students to connect with music. And so it was like a couple of our teachers were getting opportunities for visitors to come in to perform, connecting with the ASO so that we could get tickets to go through and watch proper performances. So they're things that a lot of our students may not ever get to experience other than through what we provide at school. It's quite sad because sometimes there have been times when junior primary that you're doing your topics and students may not know what the beach is. They may not necessarily have been on a train. So some of those simple things that we take for granted and what we can talk about and describe and have memories around, they haven't done that yet. So how can we open up some of those experiences and provide them for our students here at Enfield Primary School? And music is something that, once again, it brings people together. And when the opportunities, it's almost been little things have come along and it's like, oh,
Grab that.
oh, we'll grab that, we'll take that. And it's slowly kind of like the seed germinating. It's just slowly growing and evolving into something now. So going from having some choir and then linking in with the performances and providing those experiences, then we were approached and Deb asked me, would we like to be involved in a music mentoring program? I was like, oh, what's that? And hearing that it was the opportunity for my teachers to be able to have a very knowledgeable and experienced teacher of music to be able to come and work with them and look at how they can add music to their teacher toolbox and be able to very simply teach some music with some basic instruments, to add to our teaching repertoire. I was like, wow, yes, please, I'd really like to get involved with that. So I had two of my teachers involved because we over 2 years to start with. So they had 2 years, and then we swapped over and we had two more teachers come on board. So this year's our 4th year of being involved in that. Because I think it's not about having a specialist teacher. Quite often it's better that we can support our classroom teachers to have some basic knowledge and understanding, because I think music can sometimes be seen a little bit like maths. It's oh gosh, that looks really hard, or I really didn't like music lessons. They were taught in a very specific way, and so you're bringing your own experiences and memories and going, nah, that's too hard. And the arts curriculum is such a large curriculum as well, so sometimes you go, where do we start?
Yep.
And music can sometimes be just left to the side. And I know, and that my teachers have said so as well, that they wanted to be able to be better at it. They want to be able to provide that range of experiences and that all of the curriculum, but when you don't know how, they're the ones that tend to get left to the side a little bit, and you just touch on them. Whereas now we've got more music happening in the classrooms. Teachers are starting to teach their own music lessons.
And they have the confidence.
Yes.
And they know where to go if they have a glitch, if they stumble at all.
Yes.
And the fact that you've done it gradually would seem to me that you would have then also got other teaching staff on board. The students, the learners would be getting excited seeing their peers or the older kids do things, or the whatever, the other students. The parents would also have a chance to see the value of what you're doing.
Yes.
And so by what you're doing gradually with all these bits and pieces, with the mentors, with the outside visitors, with the opportunities you're giving the students, you're starting to get a whole school behind you.
That's our aim, definitely.
That's your aim.
Yes. So
are you getting there?
I think we are.
Great.
The teachers seem to be enthusiastic. They're asking for the knowledge. They're asking for the support. And I think towards the end of last year, that was when another couple of little opportunities came across my desk as well that we've jumped on. So the first one was our chair of governing council at the time, Simon Hodgson. He had a connection with Jeff Miner, who's at UniSA and the arts department, and we started to talk about a possible connection that we could make there. And because they were looking for opportunities for their pre-service teachers who were having a specialism in art to be able to come out into schools and actually have some practical experience. And that probably started a little bit more of a push and a groundswell from where we were going, because quite quickly after that, we were then writing an application for one of the music strategy grants. So the department have a document which is the music strategy, and which is really looking at supporting schools to be able to deliver the music curriculum and develop the capacity of teachers. So we applied for that, and not long after that, and instead it's like dominoes falling, not long after that, my educational director asked if we would like to host one of the new music strategy field officers, because he knew the direction that we were trying to go in here, and that we were trying to build the opportunities for music here. So it was quite quickly things started to snowball, and it's been I think we are trying to catch our breath at the moment, but there are so many exciting things happening.
Yes.
And it's just, as I said, it's wonderful to see it all kind of starting to grow even more.
To me, it's not so much dominoes falling, it's more things popping up, and
Yes.
you being there and being aware and grabbing hold of every opportunity that you see. Beck, if I gave you that magic wand question, you know the magic wand, if I had a magic wand,
Yes.
and I said to you, here you are, go for it, what would your wish, what would you want to see, what would you want me to wave at you?
That's a bit of a loaded question.
One.
What, in terms of music?
In terms of music and Enfield Primary and how it all fits in.
In terms of music, and I know that I'm really trying, because Penny Knight's my coordinator of teaching learning here. She's been a significant partner in getting all of this organised and putting the planning and support in place. And then I've got my assistant principal, David Ward, as well. So as a leadership team, knowing that the passion is there to bring this into school, because it's going to be not only supporting our academics, but it's also going to be supporting the well-being for our students.
Yep.
And what we would really like is to take what is now starting to develop and really look at how are we going to make this sustainable here at Enfield Primary. And we have Chris Narroway, who is our field officer, and she's playing a big part in that. So the roles are there for 2 years at the moment, and we really want to be able to utilise her to help us really ground it, get our plans in place, and look at how we will be able to go from here and what we need to put in place to keep it going, because we would like that music to be a point of difference for Enfield Primary. We want it to be something that we offer, that we are doing really well, that we're inspiring our students and we're inspiring our community, and being able to develop some really good quality music teaching alongside everything else, because obviously that's always the challenge. It's a packed curriculum.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. So how can we make sure that that is manageable and achievable for the teachers that come through here? but it's definitely something that we want to be a point of difference. So people will come here and go, this is something that we are known for.
Wonderful, wonderful ambition, and great that you've got that feeling of longevity in it as well, because that's so important for schools, that they can sustain and keep going, especially with such a wonderful ambition in place. Thank you so much for spending the time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Lovely to meet you. You are passionate and enthusiastic and everything that's been said about you. And I just wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Music Loop has been brought to you by the Australian Society for Music Education, SA Chapter, and through the support of the Music Education Strategy Innovation Funding. You can subscribe to Music Loop, asmesa.libsyn.com, asmesa.libsyn.com. If you have any feedback or would like further information about this episode, you can connect with Music Loop via email, musicloop@asme.edu.au, or join the discussion on ASME SA Facebook page. Show notes about how to connect and information about the episode are at asme.edu.au/SA. I'm Chris Narraway, and this has been Music Loop. Reach out, connect, be inspired.